What is up, everyone? So, this is going to be like a short testimony. I don't want to go into too much detail because I'll go into details on stories later. But this is just like like a short, I want to say short, but just, just a small testimony of what I've been through and where I'm at now. And I figured this would be right. So that way people get a little understanding about my background and why I'm doing what I'm doing. So, so I grew up in a great home. My parents are still married after 50 some years. Christian home. My grandpa was a pastor. So I was raised, on Christianity and beliefs in Jesus Christ. So I think that's, I mentioned it in a video on my Facebook before that, in Proverbs 22, I believe, you raise a child, train up a child as the way he should go, and when he gets older, he will not depart from it. And so growing up, the Bible was very influential in my life, still is. I try to read every day, pray every morning. So I grew up in a Christian home, and then I would say early teen years, I started experimenting with getting high. And it started off not marijuana, not alcohol, but I had a friend, excuse me, I had a friend who lived up behind me in these apartment buildings. And he came back from, I think it was Arizona, and some friend of his showed him how to get high off of huffing, like huffing paint, huffing gasoline, huffing glue. So that's where it all started for me. I started huffing at a young age, probably about, I had to have been like 12, something like that. And it was pretty crazy. Like we would huff paint and glue and gasoline and other things. And yeah, so at a young age I was getting high, and it was a crazy. It was very, I mean, at the time it was fun. It was fun. We were young and stupid and doing stupid things. And then later on, I drank alcohol, and that was fun at first too. A lot of these things start out fun, and you're doing it with friends, and it's silly and it's fun, and you don't really. I mean, you're young, so you don't realize all the danger that comes along with it, and you don't think about that stuff at the time. You're just thinking about getting high and getting drunk and having fun, and it's all fun and games, and you're laughing, and so that's what was going on. And then then I started smoking marijuana and drinking, and then doing acid and a lot of that stuff in my teen years. And with me, a lot of my friends know I was a blackout drinker. Like I would drink until I blacked out, and waking up the next morning and not really knowing what I did. Those were scary because I would hear all the stuff I did, and I was like, "There's no way," I didn't do that. But yeah, and so yeah, I started drinking, and then I got an underage consumption. Spent a few days in a detention home, and then that didn't wake me up. And then I once I got my license at 16, it wasn't not long after, I think it was a year, and then I got a DUI. And then I spent 30 days in jail, and I got out, and I got another DUI. And within like a month span, and I was on probation. And so they put me, instead of sending me back to jail, they put me in a 9-month rehab program. So at 18 years old, I was in rehab. This was 1999. So I was in rehab for all the way up to 9 months. And on like my 9th month, a guy came into the rehab, brought pills, and we took the pill. I was this close to getting out of the rehab, and I did the pills, and we walked down to the store and got drunk. And then we got caught. the next morning we woke up hungover in our rehab rooms, and uh, it was a inpatient rehab. So after you're there for so long, you were able to go. They trusted you to go out to the store and walk, and you had to be back at a certain time, but we had that freedom. So we went and got some drinks, and I was this close to getting out of rehab. So they came in the morning and uh, busted us. They found the stuff because people, snitched us out. And so my punishment was they're going to send me back to jail, and I was this close, like I said, to finishing the rehab and going home. And so I didn't want to go back to jail. So I escaped. I left the rehab, went with some buddies. I think we did like crystal meth or something that night. It was, like I said, I made some dumb decisions when I was younger. I think that's why, thank God I've learned my lesson. And anyway, moving on. Sorry, I can't clear my throat. So, and this is cut. This is uncut video. I'm not gonna cut clips and clip it out. No, this is me. What you see is what you get, raw and unfiltered. But anyway, so I remember calling my mom from my friend's house after I skipped the rehab, and she's crying, and I'm busting down. She's like, "Turn yourself back in." She's like, "Turn yourself back in." So I turned myself back in, and thank God that I did, because it was only like a day or two I think I was gone, and then they were very surprised I did that, and they were happy, and they were like, we're going to give you the same punishment. We're going to send you back to jail for 30 days, and you're going to come back to the rehab and finish out 3 more extra months, which is what I did. So I did that, and in the time I was preparing to go into the Navy, and then I got out of the rehab. This was October of 2000. So I was gone from all the way from like June 99 all the way to October of 2000. I was gone, locked up between rehab and jail. And so I get out. Next few months, I'm right back drinking. I am right back drinking. Right back with friends, drinking. Didn't learn nothing. And then I think it was January. I was already talking to the recruiter, planning on going to the military. And I think it was January I got busted again, like a DUI or underage or something like that. Because I was still like 19 years old. So I went right back to jail. January of 2000. No, January 2001, I'm sorry. And then I was in there for a few days, and then my probation officer talked to the recruiter, and they talked to the judge, and they brought me out, and they were like, "You'll be in boot camp in 2 weeks." So it was either a couple years in jail or military. And I was stoked. I was pumped. I was happy. I was like, "Yeah, let's do this. Let's begin this new chapter." So I went in the military, and I went through boot camp, which was a breeze because I was already institutionalized from the rehab and the jail. That boot camp was a piece of cake. I was already a couple months away from family. I was already used to it, so it was nothing. And then got out of the boot camp, came home, and got married. Got married to my first wife, and yeah, that was looking back now, it's like felt like yesterday. So I got married, and then my ship that I got stationed on was already deployed. So I flew out to Bahrain, and then I think I was out for a few months, and then came right back in right before or right after 9/11 hit. I think I got back to California in like September, a couple days after 9/11. So I went through military, and during the whole time military, it just made me more of an alcoholic. I mean, going on deployments, going to bars, I was drinking heavily. That didn't change nothing. Anyone's been in the military and is deployed, or it just, for me, I just became more of an alcoholic, and the addictive personality that I have, it just. But I look back on my life and I have no regrets, because I want to be who I am today. If I didn't go through some of the things that I went through, so I did my time in the military. Well, I left the military, or halfway through my term, I ended up extended the year, joined the Seabees, went to school down in Mississippi, got stationed back out California, had my daughter, left for Iraq. I didn't get to see her born, so I didn't come back home till she was like 7 months, something like that, 6, 7 months old. That was rough. Like I said, I'm not going to go into too much detail. I'll get into detail in these stories later on. This is just, like I said, short testimony. So I went to Iraq, a couple times, and the last time I was like, all right, I'm done. I'm getting out. I was supposed to go on shore duty, but my time at sea didn't count towards my time in the Seabees, so they wanted to like restart it, and I'd have to do a couple more years in the battalion. And at that time, I was done deploying. I did like 4 deployments, and I was like, I'm ready for shore duty, and I didn't get it, so I was like, all right, I'm out. So got out in the military, stayed in California for a little bit, moved back home, and then it wasn't long after, not even 6 months after I got home, and I'm right back with old friends, right back doing smoking weed after I haven't smoked weed and since 99, 98. And here I am back 2006, back home from the military, and I'm smoking weed and I'm drinking and getting ready to go through my first divorce of the summer of 2006. And so from 2006 all the way to 2007, after my first divorce, I was drinking heavily, like heavily drinking really bad. So it was the summer of 2007. It was on my 26th birthday. I drinking all day long, drinking all day long. Went to Cleveland, I believe uh, that night to see one of my friends fight in the MMA. And that night I came home and I was blacked out. Don't remember. We went to a bar, and then when we left the bar, I rode home in the back of back of a truck. So I was in the bed of a truck, and being as drunk and as I was, I fell out of the bed of a truck on the highway, fractured my skull, got life flighted up to hospital in here in Canton, Ohio, and went blind for a little bit. I fractured my skull. Thank God I didn't die. You know, from what I know, the nurses said they never seen someone come in with that type of accident and survive. So, you know, that was a life changer right there. So, almost died. Went blind for like a month. I couldn't see. Was at school at the time, so I had to take time off school. And right there was like a turning point in my life. This was 2007, right? Whenever that happened. And I got sober from alcohol for about 6 years after that. But right after that accident, they were giving me heavy pills, heavy medication for my pain, because there was swelling on my head, there was blood bleeding, and it was very serious. So they gave me strong medication, and like I said, the strong addictive personality that I have, I got hooked on pills. So I was doing pills for a couple of years after that, and that was rough. But I got sober from alcohol for about 6 years after that. 2010, 11, 2011, I got remarried, and then so I'm not drinking, but I'm doing drugs. I'm doing pills, and I'm smoking weed, uh, and I lost a good job that I had from after the military because of drugs. I failed a drug test, and that was 2010, and then that's when my life really changed. I'd say about 4 years after that, I was very heavy in drugs, and from about 2011 to about 2015, heavy in drugs, and then I started smoking this stuff called spice. You know, if you ever heard of spice, it's like they used to call it synthetic marijuana. Uh, it was very strong, like very strong. You could smoke that, and then you go try to smoke marijuana, and it wouldn't do anything because the spice was so strong that the marijuana was nothing compared to it. Very addicting, very hard to come off of. And I had a buddy who was a heroin addict and who's sober today. Proud of him. But from what I can remember, him saying that spice stuff was harder to get off of than heroin was. That's how strong this stuff was. And I was doing that for about 4 years, and you'd really get hooked on it. You couldn't function during the day without that stuff. Like, the withdrawals were insane. Insane. So, like I said, I'll go into more detail on some of the stuff, but like I said, I just want a brief testimony. So, then I had my first son born. I was still smoking. My second son born 2014, still smoking. I think it wasn't long after that I quit. And at that time, when I quit, I mean, when I went through withdrawals, they were bad. They were bad. Anyone can attest to this and can relate. Withdrawals, sometimes it's hard to kick things because the withdrawals are so insane, intense, that you just go right back to the drug because you can't handle the withdrawals. So I remember going through those withdrawals nights, night after night, and I remember I kept a journal and I would write in the journal, and at the same time I'm praying and I'm crying and I'm writing and I'm praying and I'm crying and I'm writing, and those are very dark, hard nights coming off that stuff. And I just kept praying, and like I said, I would write journals, and I gotta find those journals, but I would just write like my prayers. As I'm praying, I'm writing this stuff, and it's just, and tears, or the paper's wet from my tears, and those were very rough nights, very rough nights. So I'll never forget those. And then I got off that stuff, thank God. And then for a while there, even between those years, I was doing the bath salts and the cocaine and the spice, and it was like a just a evil killer combination of stuff. And so I thank God that I got off that stuff, but I went right back into the alcohol for a couple of years, right back into the alcohol, and it was no different. I'm drinking and blacking out and doing stupid stuff. So, uh, 2017, right when my wife at the time was pregnant with my youngest son, she just found out, probably not even a couple weeks after. I was like, all right, I got to be done drinking. I want to be done drinking before my youngest son's born. So it was February 2017. I quit. So we're coming up on 9 years sobriety from alcohol. And after I quit alcohol, I was still smoking weed. And a lot of people are gonna hate on me for this, but with weed, like, I smoked a lot. I was going through a quarter a couple days, probably an eighth a day, and a lot. And I always had to be stoned. I couldn't function not being stoned. And then I had a short temper. I couldn't eat. Uh, I just, everything I did I had to be stoned for. I was very dependent, and so, and I'm smoking, and like I said, my wife and I at the time, we were fighting a lot, and I had a short temper, and I was broke, and my money went to alcohol, or not alcohol, but weed at the time. And so 2018, we ended up getting kicked out of our house, and then we lived in a hotel for the summer. We were homeless, and then and I'm still smoking weed, and we're spending our money on hotels and food at the time, and we didn't have nothing. So anyway, 2019 comes, and we moved back to Ohio, or we're in Ohio, but we moved back to where I'm at now. And my wife leaves at the time, so it's just me and my boys. And at the time, I put it in a video before. I'm just gonna say it again. So it's just me and my boys, and we're watching the movie Rango, and at the end of the movie, Rango with Johnny Depp, the little lizard guy. So at the end of the movie, uh, the town finds out he's like a fraud and he's not who he says he is. So he leaves and goes on this little journey on his own, and then he comes across this spirit, and the spirit tells him, hey, or Rango says, hey, this town, they need, I'm not even supposed to be here. And the spirit's like, yeah, you come a long way for, and for being here where you're not supposed to be here, or something along those lines. And he's like, the town, they need like a hero. And he's like, I'm not that guy. And Spirit tells him, well, be that guy, be the hero. So at that time, we're watching this, and I'm like, my kids, I'm smoking weed, and I'm like, I break down, and I'm like, my kids need a hero right now. They need their dad. They need 100% of me. So I threw my weed away, threw my tobacco away, flushed it down the toilet, and I didn't look back. And I was like, I'm done. Quit cold turkey. And that week after that was rough. It was rough. I mean, withdrawals and crying. And for me, like I said, the marijuana, it was bad for me. Very bad for me. And the withdrawals were strong. Marijuana today, there's so much strong marijuana, and the strands are so strong. It's not like back in the day. This weed today is strong. So the withdrawals, and as much as I smoke, I'd wake up and my bed was soaked in sweat because of the withdrawals. Very rough for me. And as much as I smoked, like I said, the withdrawals were just that more intense. So I threw my weed away and I threw my tobacco away. And I was like, all right, my kids need me. So we were getting evicted. And then thank God for my parents. They helped me get a car. And then I got a job. And then I'm still at the job I was back in 2019. Got a place to live. I still have my car, and we're taken care of. I'm sober. My kids have their dad. It's I homeschool my kids, so I'm very blessed to be able to do that. And so, like I said, this is just a short testimony. I will go into details of things later, but here I am, uh, going on 9 years sobriety of alcohol. I haven't smoked marijuana since 2020 because I ended up smoking again a few months after I moved back in or moved here. But then at the end of the time that I was smoking it, I just felt dirty. I don't know if anyone can relate to that. And when you're smoking them bowls and you're scraping them bowls and you run out and then you leave at late hours of the night to go get your weed or go get whatever it is because you can't go without it. And I just felt dirty, and I was tired of feeling that. I was tired of feeling dirty, and I didn't want my kids seeing me like that. And so I thank God that my kids will never see me like that. I want them growing up seeing me as a strong dad. I want them to see me in control. I don't want them seeing me, weak. Even though, we have our moments, but, I'm not where I want to be, but I'm better off than where I was. So here we are going into 2026, and yeah, the horizon looks bright. And so that's my testimony. Like I said, I'm not where I want to be, but I'm better than where I was. And yeah, so hopefully, like I said, moving on with this channel, I can't do live streams yet. I think you have to have so many subscribers or something before you can go live. But eventually, I want to go live, maybe talk to other people, and if there's any questions or anything, leave comments. Trust me, I have plenty of ideas for videos and what I'm going to talk about and where I want this channel to go. But if you have any questions or anything, leave a comment. If you like this video, I'd appreciate it. If you like it, subscribe, and like I said, there's more content on the way. So stay tuned, and God bless.